Under the shimmering light of the twin moons, the war began without warning. One moment the alien capital of Jirakai was alive with song and trade. The next it was drowned in the roar of incoming fire. Starships tore through the clouds like burning spears, and the streets filled with the sound of people running. No one understood who had attacked first or why the ceasefire was broken, but the destruction was real and merciless. From the balcony of the High Council Tower, the alien diplomat Varshan watched his city crumble. His scaled hands trembled as each explosion lit up the night, showing him a truth he did not want to accept. The war was not just between fleets and armies, it was something deeper, something that had been growing in secret for years. A sickness had begun to spread among his people, feeding on fear, and now it seemed to be accelerating with every passing hour. He turned from the burning skyline and made his way to the emergency chamber. The council members were arguing in harsh voices, accusing one another of betrayal. In the center of the table was a holographic display, not of enemy movements, but of the growth pattern of the mysterious plague. It was expanding faster than their scientists could measure. No cure had been found. Every attempt at slowing it had failed. Even their strongest bioshields were useless against it. Varshan's mind kept drifting to one possibility. He had heard the whispers from the outer colonies that humans had once faced something similar. They had defeated it, though no one outside their world knew how. Contacting them would be dangerous. The galaxy had long avoided direct ties with Earth, fearing their unpredictable nature. But now, with the plague mutating into something unstoppable, he could no longer ignore the chance that only a human could save them. The chamber doors burst open, and a young guard stumbled in, his armor scratched and splattered with ash. He reported that the sickness was no longer confined to the outer districts. It was now appearing inside the council building itself. The members froze, realizing they were no longer safe even here. One counselor collapsed mid-sentence, his body convulsing with strange movements beneath his skin. Varshan stepped back, horror gripping his chest. The disease was unlike anything they had studied. It grew as if it had a will of its own. The air systems began shutting down, sealing the chamber to prevent further spread. But Varshan knew it was already too late. The infection would not stop. It was adapting too quickly. His eyes fell on the emergency communicator in the corner of the room. With shaking fingers, he entered the restricted frequency codes. He was breaking every treaty clause by doing so, but he no longer cared. Somewhere out there, among the human colonies, was someone who might know what to do. A static-filled voice answered after a long pause. It was deep, calm, and distinctly human. Varshan introduced himself quickly, skipping all formalities, and explained the nature of the threat. He could hear the man on the other end breathing slowly, as if weighing every word before replying. Finally, the voice said they had seen this before long ago, in a war no alien archives mentioned. They might have a cure, but getting it would mean crossing into restricted space that no alien ship had entered in centuries. Varshan closed his eyes, the sounds of distant destruction still rumbling through the tower walls. He had no time to debate with the council, no time to wait for a vote. The sickness was spreading like fire through dry grass. If the humans truly had the cure, then he would do whatever it took to bring it back, even if it meant risking his life, his honor, and the fragile peace between their species. The human ship arrived in orbit above Jirakai 3 days later, its hull a dull gray that reflected no light. To most aliens, human vessels looked crude, but Varshan had read enough about them to know that their strength lay inside, not outside. When the docking signal came through, he went alone to meet the envoy. There was no ceremony, no grand welcome, only urgency. Every hour lost meant more lives consumed by the growing sickness. The human who stepped out wore no armor, only a simple coat lined with strange devices. His name was not given, and his face held the calm of someone used to walking into danger. He asked no questions about Varshan's rank or authority. Instead, he requested direct access to the infected zones. Varshan hesitated. The council would see it as a violation of protocol, but the human's eyes held no patience for delay. With a silent nod, Varshan led him toward the quarantine district. The streets were silent, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the kind that presses on the chest, making every step heavier. Windows were sealed with black polymer, and the smell of burnt air lingered from recent sterilization attempts. The human scanned the air with a small handheld device, its screen flashing red in irregular patterns. "It's alive," he said quietly, more to himself than to Varshan. The words chilled the diplomat more than the cold wind rushing through. The empty streets. Inside one of the isolation shelters, the sight was worse than Varshan had feared. The infected lay on cots, their skin moving in unnatural ripples, as if something inside them was pushing out. The human crouched beside one victim, his hands moving with precision as he took samples. He spoke of a microorganism that could change its form faster than any weapon could destroy it. Varshan watched as the human's brow furrowed. This was no ordinary investigation. It was a race against an intelligent enemy. They left the shelter without speaking for several minutes. The human walked with his head lowered, scanning data as they moved. Finally, he said the organism was not native to Jerikai. It had been altered, reshaped into a weapon. Varshan stopped in his tracks, realizing what that meant. Someone had done this on purpose. His first thought was of their enemies in the current war, but the human shook his head. "This isn't their work. This is older," he said, his voice heavy with memory. Back at the temporary lab set up inside an abandoned tower, the human began working with speed that bordered on frantic. He mixed compounds unfamiliar to Varshan, some brought from his ship, others taken from local supplies. He explained little, only muttering about an original strain he had seen once, years ago. Varshan wanted to ask what had happened back then, but the look in the human's eyes made him stop. Whatever it was, it had left scars deeper than any. Battlefield. As the hours passed, a low alarm sounded through the district. Varshan's communicator flashed with urgent messages. New infections were breaking out beyond the quarantine zone. The human cursed under his breath, packing his equipment with sharp movements. "It's learning faster," he said, almost as if speaking to a rival. Varshan followed him back to the ship, where sealed containers were loaded into the cargo hold. The human explained they needed to travel to a specific location, far from the city, if there was any chance to finish the cure. Varshan looked out at the burning horizon, knowing the council would not approve this mission. They would see it as reckless, perhaps even treasonous. But the alternative was to watch his people vanish under the weight of an unstoppable plague. He stepped aboard the human ship without another word, feeling the deck hum beneath his feet as they lifted into the night sky. The war outside no longer mattered. There was only this fight now, against the thing that kept growing. The human ship cut through the upper atmosphere, heading toward a barren wasteland far from the capital. From above, the land looked like cracked stone veins running through endless black sand. Varshan had never been here before, and even the navigation charts labeled it as restricted territory. The human piloted without hesitation, guiding the vessel to a canyon hidden between two ridges. As the ship descended, the air shimmered with static, and Varshan's scales prickled with unease. They disembarked into the canyon floor, where massive pillars of rock rose like the bones of an ancient creature. The human opened one of the sealed containers and began setting up a portable lab. His movements were swift and deliberate, every tool placed exactly where it was needed. Varshan asked why they had come to such a remote place, and the human explained that the air here was different, holding remnants of minerals no longer found in other regions. These minerals, he believed, could weaken the organism's ability to grow. Varshan assisted by collecting samples from the canyon walls, chipping away dark fragments that glimmered faintly under the pale sun. Each strike echoed through the canyon, reminding him how alone they were. No guards, no council members, no allies, just two beings working against a ticking clock. The human tested each piece, discarding most with a shake of his head. Finally, one sample drew his attention. He crushed it into powder, mixing it into a solution that swirled with a strange silver sheen. They returned to the portable lab, and the human carefully added the silver mixture to a vial containing the organism. Both watched in tense silence. As the reaction began, at first nothing happened. Then, slowly, the violent pulsing inside the vial reduced, and the shifting mass appeared sluggish. Varshan's eyes widened at the sight, but the human did not relax. "This is only the first step," he said, warning that the organism would adapt again soon. They would need more of the mineral and faster than they could mine it. As they worked, a sudden tremor shook the canyon floor. Dust and small stones rained down from the cliffs above. Varshan looked up to see dark shapes moving along the ridge line. Through the haze, he recognized the armored silhouettes of soldiers, but not from Jerikai. These were enemy troops from the other side of the war, and they had found them. The human calmly packed the vials into a secure case, his voice low and steady as he told Varshan to be ready for trouble. The soldiers descended quickly, weapons drawn. Varshan's instincts screamed to run, but the human stepped forward, holding up a hand in warning. He spoke in a tone that carried both authority and danger, telling the soldiers they had no idea what they were walking into. The leader of the enemy unit laughed, accusing them of hiding forbidden technology. Before Varshan could speak, the human opened one of the containers and revealed the infected sample, its surface twitching under the glass. The laughter stopped instantly. A tense standoff followed. The human explained that the organism would not care about sides, borders, or victories. It would consume everyone if left unchecked. The enemy soldiers hesitated, whispering among themselves. The leader finally lowered his weapon slightly, demanding proof of the cure. The human refused to waste time on politics. Instead, he offered a choice: help gather the mineral and live, or walk away and face certain death. The canyon was silent except for the distant hum of the portable lab. Reluctantly, the enemy unit agreed. Under the human's direction, they began breaking pieces from the canyon walls, carrying the mineral back to the lab in armfuls. The human worked faster now, mixing new batches and testing their strength against the organism. Varshan watched the process, his heart pounding with both fear and hope. If this worked, it could mean survival, not just for Jerikai, but for every species caught in the spread. For the first time in weeks, he felt the faint weight of possibility. Asterisk. The work in the canyon continued under a heavy sky, clouds rolling in as if drawn by the tension below. Varshan hauled chunks of mineral to the portable lab while the human crushed and refined them into the shimmering silver powder. The enemy soldiers, now temporary allies, labored without complaint, their eyes fixed on the strange vials that seemed to hold both danger and salvation. Every so often, the human glanced at a small screen that tracked the organism's behavior, watching for any sign of new growth. By midday, they had enough mineral to fill several sealed containers. The human began combining the powder with other compounds from his ship, producing a thick solution that pulsed faintly in the light. Varshan asked why it reacted that way, and the human explained that it was designed to confuse the organism's ability to adapt. It would not kill it outright, but it could slow its expansion long enough for a more permanent cure to be made. The process was delicate, and one mistake could ruin everything. As they worked, the sound of engines echoed through the canyon. This time it was not enemy soldiers but small drones, their metallic shells gleaming as they descended in a tight formation. Varshan recognized them as belonging to the Jerikai military. The council had found them, and judging by the drone's scanning beams, they were not here to offer assistance. The human's expression hardened. He whispered that too many factions wanted control of the cure, and that none of them could be trusted to use it wisely. The drones projected a holographic image of a high-ranking counselor, his face stern and unyielding. He ordered Varshan to return immediately and surrender the samples to the Council's Science Division. Varshan knew this meant the cure would vanish into political arguments while the sickness spread unchecked. He looked at the human, who gave a small shake of his head. Without a word, the human triggered an electromagnetic pulse from one of his devices, knocking the drones from the air in a shower of sparks. The soldiers shifted uneasily, glancing between Varshan and the human. To attack the drones was to defy the Council openly. But Varshan no longer cared about the consequences. He reminded the soldiers that without the cure, their own cities would fall just as fast as Jerikai. The canyon air felt colder now, the kind of cold that settles in before a storm. Above them, the first drops of rain began to fall, pattering against rock and metal alike. They loaded the mineral containers onto the human ship, working quickly as the rain intensified. The human secured each case with precision, locking them into a temperature-controlled chamber. He explained that the next step required a sterile environment and specific equipment only available aboard his vessel. Varshan understood that once they left the canyon, there would be no going back without drawing the full wrath of the Council. The choice had already been made in his heart. As the ship's engines roared to life, the enemy soldiers watched from the canyon floor. Some raised their hands in silent farewell, others simply turned back to their own transports. Varshan wondered if they would keep their word and spread news of the cure, or if fear would silence them. The human guided the ship upward through the storm, its hull shaking under the force of the wind. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the vast emptiness beyond the ridges. Once they broke through the cloud cover, the view was clear and endless. Stars stretched in every direction, and the world below became just another shape in the dark. Varshan stood beside the human, watching the planets shrink as they rose higher. There was no certainty ahead, only the hope that what they carried could change the course of a war and stop the thing that refused to stop growing. The human ship drifted beyond the upper orbit, heading toward a deep space medical station hidden in a quiet sector. From the outside, the station looked abandoned, its lights dim and docking bays sealed. Varshan learned that it was a place humans used for research away from political eyes, a sanctuary for projects too dangerous to be handled near populated worlds. The human maneuvered the ship into a concealed port, and the heavy docking clamps locked them in place with a metallic thud. Inside, the corridors were silent except for the hum of old systems still running. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and metal. The human led Varshan to a central lab, where sealed cabinets and automated workbenches waited in perfect order. With practiced movements, the human transferred the mineral containers to a decontamination chamber while Varshan set the secure case holding the organism sample onto a reinforced table. Every action felt like the opening of a final chapter, one that could not be rewritten once it began. The human began synthesizing the mineral solution, combining it with carefully measured agents from the station stores. Varshan watched the process, noting the human's precision, every movement exact, every measurement double-checked. He asked what would happen if the organism adapted again, and the human's answer was simple. Then they would lose. It was a truth Varshan already understood, but hearing it spoken aloud gave it a sharper edge. The cure they sought was not guaranteed, and failure would mean more than death. It would mean extinction. Hours passed, and the air in the lab grew heavy with tension. The human worked with a speed born from experience, his hand steady even as the equipment hummed louder. The organism in the containment vial writhed constantly, as though aware of what was being prepared against it. The sight unsettled Varshan more than he expected. It was not just a sickness, it was a predator. And like any predator, it would Fight to survive, even if it meant reshaping itself into something worse. Finally, the human drew a sample of the new compound and introduced it to a portion of the organism. The reaction was immediate. The twisting mass inside the vial slowed, its shape losing definition. Varshan felt a surge of hope, but the human didn't look satisfied. He explained that this was only a partial success. The organism was weakened, but not destroyed. To finish the cure, they would need to trigger a chain reaction that the organism could not counter. That reaction required a catalyst they did not yet have. The human opened a secure archive and began searching through data. Files stored on the station. Holographic records flickered to life, showing images of past experiments and battlefields scarred by unknown plagues. Varshan realized that humanity had faced horrors before ones no alien history recorded. The human found a file marked with a simple warning, its contents restricted. After a moment's hesitation, he opened it, revealing the formula for a catalyst derived from a rare crystalline life form found only in one dangerous region of space. Varshan studied the coordinates and felt his stomach tighten. The location was infamous, a place where ships vanished without explanation. It lay beyond trade routes, deep within a sector filled with magnetic storms and unstable wormholes. He asked if there was another way, but the human shook his head. The organism would continue to grow stronger every day, and in time it would cross into other worlds. If they wanted to end it here, they had to go into that dangerous region and return with the catalyst. The decision was made in silence. Varshan sealed the partial cure into secure storage while the human prepared the ship for departure. The station's lights flickered as systems reactivated, guiding them back to the docking port. As they lifted away, Varshan looked out at the distant stars and thought of the people still trapped under the shadow of the sickness. Their only hope now rested on a journey few had survived, and on a cure that had to work before the growing threat consumed them all. The ship left the safety of the medical station and entered the unmarked sector where the crystalline life form was said to exist. The stars here looked dimmer, as though light itself hesitated to pass through this space. Varshan watched the navigation system struggle to maintain a clear route as sudden bursts of magnetic interference flashed across the screens. The human adjusted course without panic, guiding the ship toward a swirling cluster of pale blue light ahead. They crossed into the outer edge of the cluster, and the hull groaned under invisible pressure. Strange shapes drifted in the darkness, some moving like living things, others appearing to be broken remains of ships that had come before them. The human activated a shield frequency to keep the worst of the interference away from their systems. Varshan could feel the air inside the ship vibrating slightly, as if the entire vessel were inside the chest of something breathing. After hours of careful navigation, the scanners picked up the first sign of the crystalline life form. It shimmered like frozen lightning, embedded in a floating mass of rock the size of a small moon. The humans slowed their approach, explaining that the life form was reactive to sudden movement. If startled, it could release an energy surge powerful enough to destroy the ship. They would have to move slowly and gather the crystal without triggering its defense response. The human suited up in reinforced gear, attaching a tether to his suit before stepping into the airlock. Varshan stayed at the controls, watching as the human descended onto the surface of the floating rock. The crystal pulsed with faint light, its surface shifting in patterns that seemed almost alive. With deliberate precision, the human chipped away a fragment and placed it into a containment unit. The moment the crystal was sealed, the patterns froze and the surrounding air seemed to still. Varshan felt relief as the human began his return, but the calm shattered when the scanners detected movement. From behind the floating rock, multiple heat signatures appeared, each large and fast. The human climbed back into the ship just as massive eel-like creatures emerged from the shadows. Their bodies glistened with metallic scales, and their eyes glowed the same pale blue as the crystal. The humans sealed the containment unit in a secure compartment and told Varshan to prepare for evasive maneuvers. The creatures moved with unnatural speed, circling the ship in a tightening spiral. The human pushed the engines to full power, weaving between debris and sudden bursts of magnetic energy. Varshan monitored the containment unit, fearing what might happen if it was damaged during the chase. The ship jolted violently as one of the creatures struck the hull, but the shields held. The humans steered them toward a narrow gap in a twisting asteroid field, hoping the creatures would not follow. They broke free of the cluster just as the last of the magnetic storms began to fade. The scanners showed no sign of pursuit, and the tension inside the ship finally began to ease. Varshan looked at the containment unit, its surface faintly glowing. Inside was the key to completing the cure, the final piece they had risked everything to obtain. The human began plotting a course back to Jirakai, warning that once they returned, every faction in the war would try to claim what they carried. As the ship accelerated into the quiet of open space, Varshan allowed himself a moment to imagine what success might look like. The sickness gone, his people safe, and the galaxy spared from the thing that had threatened to consume it. But he also knew the fight was far from over. They had the catalyst, but they still had to create the cure, protect it, and deliver it before the growing plague became unstoppable. Their journey home would be just as dangerous as the one that had brought them here. The journey back to Jirakai was tense from the start. The human kept the ship off standard routes, weaving through asteroid belts and slipping past patrol zones to avoid detection. Varshan spent hours monitoring the containment unit holding the crystalline catalyst, making sure its readings stayed stable. The faint blue glow inside it pulsed gently, a reminder of both its value and its danger. Every moment they carried it, they risked drawing attention from those who would kill for it. Halfway through the return trip, the ship's sensors detected an incoming vessel. Its transponder was masked and it was moving fast. The human instantly changed course, pushing the engines while activating countermeasures to scramble their signal. Varshan's mind raced, wondering if it was the Council's forces or enemy warships. Either way, neither could be allowed to seize the catalyst. The other vessel closed the distance quickly, forcing the human to prepare for evasive maneuvers. The pursuing ship fired a volley of ion blasts, shaking their vessel violently. Alarms lit the control panels, warning of shield strain. The human executed a sharp dive into the upper atmosphere of a nearby gas giant, using the swirling storms as cover. Lightning bolts the size of city towers flashed around them, and winds battered the hull. Varshan gripped the nearest railing, feeling the weightless lurch as the ship twisted through the chaos. The pursuers hesitated at the storm's edge, unwilling to follow deeper. They emerged from the far side of the gas giant, engines burning hot. The human kept the ship at high speed for another hour before finally slowing. Varshan checked the sensors and confirmed they were no longer being tracked. The relief was brief, replaced by the urgency of their mission. They had avoided capture, but every delay brought the plague closer to spreading beyond control. The humans set their course directly for the hidden medical station where they would complete the cure. Upon docking, the station's automated systems scanned the ship for contamination. Once cleared, they moved the containment unit and mineral supplies into the main lab. The human wasted no time, beginning the final synthesis process. Varshan assisted where he could, preparing the secure environment and monitoring the organism. Samples. The catalyst was ground into fine shards before being combined with the partially developed compound. The mixture glowed brightly, and the air seemed to hum as if the solution carried its own energy. When the completed cure was introduced to the infected samples, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The organism's movements stopped entirely, its form collapsing into inert fragments. Varshan's chest tightened with relief, but the human remained focused. They ran multiple tests to confirm the reaction, ensuring the organism could not adapt. Every result came back the same. For the first time since the war began, they had something that could stop the plague from growing. The human transferred the cure into portable dispersal units, designed for rapid planetary deployment. Varshan knew that getting these units to the surface would be dangerous. Both the Council and their enemies would want control over them, and neither would trust the other to use the cure without hidden motives. The human suggested releasing the cure in multiple locations simultaneously, making it impossible for any single faction to claim sole credit or control. It was a risky strategy, but it was the only way to ensure its use. As they prepared to depart, Varshan took one last look at the sealed vials, each one holding the future of countless lives. The human stood beside him, silent but resolute. Together, they stepped onto the ship knowing that the hardest part still lay ahead. Delivering the cure would mean crossing battle lines, facing betrayal, and risking everything they had fought for. But they also knew there was no other choice if they wanted to save their worlds from what had been unleashed. The ship descended toward Jericho under the cover of night, slipping through the upper atmosphere without broadcasting its presence. Fires still burned across the outer districts, and the once bright capital now glowed faintly beneath a haze of smoke. Varshan stood beside the human at the controls, scanning for safe landing zones where the cure could be deployed first. Every second counted, and every delay meant more lives lost to the plague that had already consumed so much. They touched down in a narrow industrial sector that had been abandoned weeks earlier. Varshan carried 2 of the dispersal units while the human took the rest, each one sealed against contamination. Moving swiftly through the silent streets, they reached the first deployment point, a central air circulation hub that fed clean air to several nearby blocks. The human activated the unit, and a fine mist spread invisibly into the system, carrying the cure into every connected building. From there, they split up to cover more ground. Varshan moved to the western quarter, deploying a second unit in the western quarter, deploying a second unit in the Wangzhen quarter. Underground transit tunnels. The stale air began to shift as the dispersal system carried the cure outward, and for the first time in days, the oppressive stillness seemed to ease. He encountered no soldiers, only the distant echo of movement, perhaps survivors who would soon feel the effects of the cure. Every step reminded him of the urgency that had brought them here. Meanwhile, the human crossed into the eastern districts, where the fighting had been fiercest. Several buildings still smoldered from recent battles, and the streets were littered with debris. He deployed 2 more units, one in a collapsed medical station and another in a damaged water treatment plant. Each location would spread the cure far beyond its immediate reach, forcing it deep into the city's infrastructure. By the time the council realized what was happening, it would already be too late to stop it. They regrouped near the city's Central Plaza, where the largest dispersal unit waited to be activated. As they worked, a squad of armed soldiers approached, weapons raised. Their insignia marked them as council loyalists, and their commander demanded that Varshan and the human surrender the cure immediately. Varshan stepped forward, refusing. He told them that this cure belonged to the people, not to politicians or war leaders. The soldiers hesitated, glancing between their orders and the desperation in Varshan's voice. The human broke the tension by activating the final dispersal unit. A soft hiss filled the plaza as the mist drifted upward, caught by the wind and carried into every surrounding street. The commander lowered his weapon, realizing there was nothing left to take. Without another word, the squad turned and left, disappearing into the shadows. Varshan and the human stood in silence, watching as the faint glow of dawn began to creep over the rooftops. By mid-morning, the first signs of recovery began to show. The infected who had been writhing in pain grew still, their breathing easing. Those who had been on the verge of collapse opened their eyes, confused but alive. Across the city, the plague's hold was breaking. Varshan and the human moved quietly through the streets, checking the dispersal points and ensuring the cure was taking effect. In every district, they saw the same thing, life returning where there had been only fear. When their work was done, they returned to the ship. The war outside still raged, and political struggles would no doubt follow, but they had achieved what they had set out to do. The sickness was gone, and the galaxy was safe from the thing that had kept growing. As the ship lifted into the morning sky, Varshan looked at the human and gave a single nod of gratitude. They had risked everything, but in doing so, they had saved everything.